When we were growing up, a lot of our very creative friends had one common goal in life for a distant future: to become a photographer with National Geographic magazine. The thought of going out into the wild on assignment, spending months at a time, taking pictures and videos that add to our understanding of our world and how we interact with nature. Now, if you haven't read National Geographic magazine, I highly recommend that you do. It's still a fascinating place to get a deep insight into nature. Having said that, getting a full-time job as a wildlife photographer is hardly a career option anymore. There are very few people who work full-time as photographers for wildlife magazines anymore. So if you want to become a wildlife or nature photographer, how should you go about it? Where do you begin? How much of this is technical and how much is art? Do you need very expensive state-of-the-art equipment to start off? How does one actually make money? Now, these are all very interesting and important questions if you're considering a career in this field. So we spoke to a lot of photographers, including one of India's most well-respected and passionate wildlife and nature photographers, Aditya Singh, or Dicky as he's more well known. Dicky's been living in Ranthambore for more than 20 years and has photographed the park and its inhabitants extensively. Well, the first thing you'll obviously need access to is wildlife, which sounds obvious till you realize that you'll need to go on many shoots before you get good at it. And if you're living far from the forest, be prepared to spend a lot on a rather expensive hobby. You really need to learn about your subject. That's how Dicky says he got started.
What got you into photography?
I moved to Ranthambore in 1998, and my wife and I, we started a small lodge. At that time, it wasn't a very well-known park as such, and there were very few visitors coming here. We, over the next 1 or 2 years, I built up a reputation as a good field worker for wildlife documentary filmmakers. So I was working with BBC on a long project, and they wanted someone to shoot stills for behind the scenes and of the park. So I sent the kit down, and we were a team of 4 people, 2 drivers, the cameraman and I. So it came up on me to start to take those pictures. So till then I had no clue. I wasn't a photographer by any standards. And then learned some basics from the cameraman and then some from the other, and I ended up doing the stills for a BBC documentary film. And so I actually got into photography after many years after I got into wildlife. And for the first 10, 12 years of my wildlife travel, it was all binoculars. And cameras came in around the year 2000.
Now, even if you're absolutely certain that you want to make a career of wildlife and nature photography, don't just jump into it. Spend a few years learning the craft. Visit different national parks and reserves. Get to understand the forest.
I would say, so see, photography is a skill. It's an artistic skill. So if you go do a course in photography or something, you may not really become a good photographer or even a functional photographer. If you want to make a career out of photography, it's probably better to start taking pictures for a few years before you jump into it. Because really speaking, it's a competitive market, and your chances of getting any work or getting published or getting sold only brighten when you know your skill very well, yeah. Because you're competing with the big guys then.
Anyone can snap a tiger from a jeep using their mobile phone, but a great photographer can take a photo that stands out and speaks to people. Maybe it tells a story, or maybe it shows the interplay of the animal and the environment. So let's look at getting 3 things correct that will help you stand out. First, the technical skills. Understanding exposure, understanding light, understanding how your camera works so you instantly know which parameter to change to get the photo you want. This isn't enough to make you a great photographer, but it's definitely a necessary step. There are some fantastic YouTube channels that we link to help you gain some of the technical skills you need to develop. Second, the gear. Now, wildlife photography actually requires the best and most expensive lenses because you're shooting in extremely tough external conditions. You're often shooting from great distances, and your subject could be moving really, really fast. The best telephoto lenses could cost up to 8 or 10 lakh rupees. Now, you definitely don't need to spend that money to begin with. In fact, it would be a really bad idea.
Generally, my advice is don't splurge. Whatever you get any more kit, there should actually be a very good reason to get it, and there should be a strong need to get it. Yeah, don't just go around buying equipment, but you do need a certain basic good kit. Otherwise, it's no point. You won't get the results that you're looking at.
Finally comes the craft, compositions, angles, narrative, the interplay of light with your subject and its surroundings. This comes with years of practice, which is why you need to get out there and shoot a lot. Now the big question, if magazines aren't hiring, how do you actually make a living off of your wildlife photography? Unfortunately, most likely there's no one source of income that will keep you sustained, like in a regular job, and you'll have to branch out into different areas.
Out of all the genres of photography, probably the toughest one to make a living out of is wildlife photography. There are just a handful of photographers globally who make a living purely out of wildlife photography. Everyone has to supplement his income through some other source. Usually that source is also photography. So you can, most photographers to supplement their income run tours, run workshops, run classes, they do exhibitions, do books. So you have to be working on from every angle where you think you can monetize your photography. So stock photography of late has not been doing very well. So I used to make a very decent living, a very decent sum till about 7 to 8 years ago. And somehow that number has been going down for the last few years. So you work on multiple things. I sell a lot of prints, I sell limited edition prints, I do books, and I assist people a lot. So yes, you have to work on all possible forums, all possible angles. Yeah.
And yes, even though we at IndieVisual are ourselves a stock photography website, we agree that being a full-time stock photographer is most probably not going to be a sustainable, rich life. It could be a great supplement to your income as a photographer or a hobbyist, and it could even be a great source of passive income. But yes, earning lakhs a month as a stock photographer is rather unlikely. What about magazine shoots and paid assignments though? How does one go about it? Do you pitch first and confirm an assignment, then go shoot? Or do you go shoot and then pitch the result to a magazine or an online platform?
Usually, you get assignments before you shoot, or you rarely shoot something and then pitch for magazines. I do, if you get something spectacular, then the way I go about it is to submit it to these media agencies which pitch to magazine. They can pitch, their reach is bigger, but most of the assignments that you will get, you will get much before you shoot. You get the assignment and then you go for the shoot. And if you have stock footage of the same subjects, then it's even better. But if I end up shooting something rare, then I go to these media agencies which pitch to the magazines.
Talk to the magazines first to see if they'll be interested. Which means that you definitely need to know the magazine people, or they need to know you. So you should have a good online presence. Use Instagram well, edit and put up your videos on YouTube channels. You need to use these channels well and become popular online.
In my career, Instagram wasn't important because my career started before the social media was there. I guess social media gives you a reach that is really good. It's a good marketing tool, but for someone like me, I don't think even it makes any much of a difference to my career as such. But that's me, but then I know people who are for whose careers Instagram is really important, and it is. If you get your social media act right, obviously it helps massively in photography. I come from a time when social media wasn't around, so I'm not too social media savvy either. But my advice to any new photographer who's coming up, do look at social media. It's a very powerful tool, and Instagram especially, because it's the biggest for photography, it is a very powerful tool. If you get your act right on Instagram, it will really help your career.
So that was a very quick look at what it takes to become a wildlife photographer. Good luck and keep watching. And yes, sign up on IndieVisual.in and share your videos and photos and start off on your journey as a professional photographer.